Good evening, good evening. I don't know what time it is. I took a nap, and so I decided to get up because sometimes inspiration hits me. See, that's why I don't need to be inspired because it hits me. I receive it automatically. You know, because I do think deeply, and I look for reasons. I look for reasons in things. The reasons that we are here. You know, you know, and so I was thinking because one thing I know from experience is, you know, the truth does matter. The truth does matter. And as long as you are the best of your ability, being a truthful, upstanding person, I think you're protected in that way. At least I felt as though I was. And let me just tell you why I'm saying this. Um, so I put out videos a while ago. I can't even remember when I did or where they are. I have them. I have the videos, but I don't know um, where I stored them. But it don't matter. I mean, it's in my subconscious and it stays there forever. Whatever I was saying, but I was talking about role models in Black culture. In the Black and Spanish, predominantly Black and Spanish culture that I grew up with, and it had me to thinking how courageous and brave I must have been back then. And still is, god damn it. I want to make that clear. That's why I'm saying this. You know, you do build up over time. Once you recognize um, the true, genuine purpose and the reasons we are here, you know, and I am thankful to my parents because they had their issues now. Let's make that very clear. My parents had their issues. Okay. The Black neighborhood, when I say the Black neighborhood, I'm saying Black and Latinos as well. That culture had its issues. Okay. Let's make that very clear. So it's just like any other community, you know, there's problems, there's issues. Um, but the one thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll talk about other stuff later, is again, if you are doing the best you can to be a genuine, upstanding human being, there's something about that is protective, and what it does is it signals out that other people realize, okay, I mean they know that you are that particular type of person. And I'm talking a young girl, a young girl that was very awkward. I was really awkward, when I was awkward. Um, I I know now that I'm thinking about it, I was extremely um, not bragging, but intelligent. What the fuck does that mean? It means nothing, actually. But the point of the matter, I can remember growing up in elementary school, because this stuff is starting to come back. Because things come back to you when it's necessary. Your memories and stuff. If they, so we shouldn't stress so much on our memories, or trying to remember anything. Everything is stored. Okay. And when there's a need for it, it will come to you. Okay. Um, our memories are like libraries. Okay. And, but the only difference is um, with my library in my subconscious, my, consciousness, whatever term you want to use. I like to talk in relatable terms because I could take it there. I really can in my language. But it did is now coming back to me how I was always scoring very high on certain tests, apparently, because I always ended up being separated with a group of people, and then there was another group of people on the other side of the room. Okay, on one side of the room is all black people and people of color, and then on the other room, on the other side where I was, it was just me, the only black female, and then all the rest were white children. And I thought, I never understood what was going on, because keep in mind, my parents stopped going to school, and my mom could barely read or write. My dad, the same, circumstances. My dad had, I knew I said this to somebody. My dad had to drop out because he was, they were going to be taking care of some land that belonged to them that eventually got stolen, as I mentioned. And my mom dropped out because my mom was responsible for babysitting. And so that's what her role was. She was always a babysitter and a nurturer, taking care of all the kids, while everybody else was out doing their thing. My mom was always a babysitter. And she did that even when she did that up until she became ill. And, once she became ill, she was unable to babysit. But everyone knew my mom in the neighborhood as a babysitter. And they always bringing their children to my mom. We always say my mom's house. And that's a cultural thing. Even though my dad was there, that was still mom's house. That belonged to him. They always would call my mom, by her name and say, that's blah, blah, blah's house. And my dad had no issues with that at all. As a matter of fact, my dad said that, that my mom made him who he became, right? The strength of her made him who he is, even though he was physically an extremely strong man and brilliant as well. He was brilliant as well, even though he had that confidence to know who the head of the household was. Okay, my mother. But then my mother started having some issues with her, some kind of mental imbalance. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the cause was, but but there was a lot of kids always running around, and I mean that would drive me crazy. I can imagine. And then of course, she had other needs that possibly were not being met, and then sometimes alcohol played a role as well with her. And then throughout my research, and not so much, I didn't have to research a whole lot. All I had to do was ask questions. So I asked some questions because I can remember my mom got sick, some years ago. And when I say sick, she had, I think it was a minor stroke. I don't know if it was a minor stroke or a major stroke. Well, no, it was well, I mean, that's relative, actually. She had a stroke. All right, let's just be, she had a stroke. And I was out. I had moved out of the house at that time. And when I came into town one day, and I could tell something wasn't right about her, because my mom, her mood was always fluctuating. She would be extremely, extremely excited. I mean, just, being kind of inappropriate with her behavior. Dancing, being kind of seductive around people, not my dad, and she was really inappropriate at times, and she embarrassed me. I don't know about the others. It's so weird. The others, we all have our own memories too. Keep that in mind of what we remember. Okay. And so I have my memories of events because I'm an individual, as well as my siblings or relatives or whoever, friends. we all have our own perception, reality of our existence. And so you could talk to one, you could talk to them and they'll have a completely different story about, or completely different memories of what they experience, or no memory of it at all. Okay. So my mom's behavior to me was inappropriate at times. You know, she was inappropriate. And, and then she became kind of, when she was that, what they call that mean drunk. And I don't know if she was particularly drunk or not, but she would get up, she would be mean, a mean woman. How about that? A mean woman. And my dad was always the loud and more friendly drunk. He had his issues with alcohol too, and that was a cultural thing. No, that was a family lineage issue. Alcohol. Okay, and it affected all of the men, I should say, in my dad's heritage or lineage. Alcohol was, you know, was the distraction, but he was functioning. He was a functional man, despite all of that. And it's weird when he wasn't under the influence because it made him drunk. Okay, let's just be clear. He somehow made it home and fell inside the house of drunkenness. And my mom will always had to come in and rescue him. Get him up, take him in, bathe him, and put his ass to bed. And the next morning, he was like a completely different person. Like almost. Where he wouldn't say a word unless you said something to him. But when he was drinking, you couldn't shut him up. So those kind of contrasts. That's what I'm, giving you the difference and how much chaos that can cause a young person. It come on now. That's unstable, an unstable environment. Yet, at the same time, we knew that there was love in the house with all that going on. Love is love. Okay, if you love them, you love them, and that's how it was. It didn't matter the fact that my mom was losing it. Literally, she was becoming more and more and more unstable. Yeah, let's say unstable. And then my dad, more and more irresponsible with his drinking and putting his life in danger because he still wanted to drive, and he paid the consequences for that a couple of times for drinking and driving. Okay, he did. So, and he paid his bills. He did what he had to do. He took responsibilities for his actions. He took responsibilities for the consequences of his behavior. Okay, that's what men do, by the way. So, but with my mom, again, like I said, she had that extreme fluctuation in her personality. And I remember when I was just about to move out, where she went deep into depression. And I was like, it was time for me to go. Okay, I was the last person to leave our parents' home because I was looking out for her, my mother, because I knew something was unstable about her. But at some point, Michelle had to go. So Michelle was the last person to leave the house. I was the last person to leave our big family and move out on my own because I knew something was going on with her. But anyway, so just as soon as I had had enough, to be honest. It was time for me, again, it was time for Michelle to go and move on, get out of my parents' house and go out there and be responsible and accountable and get on my own. And which was the best decision for me, even though even though I had all kind of shit going on with my vehicle. And it was one thing or another. And before I got into a first responder position, I was in banking of all places. Oh my gosh. Working inside. That was torture for me. But I did that job for 12 years. And I did not miss not one day in 12 years when I worked in that job, and in banking back in the day. We don't, I don't know. I was in my, I don't know, early 20s, I guess. I mean, I had to be. I don't know. I don't know if I was 18 or 19. I don't know how old I was, to be honest. But anyway, it was just time for me to move on out of my parents' house. I had to make that decision, even though I saw my mom's mental health. Because, like I said, she went into a deep depression where she just wouldn't get up. I would go in there, I'm getting dressed and getting ready to go to work, and she's still in bed and carrying, not carrying on, but I could tell that something was going on. Okay, I have to watch my words. There's no intention of, no ill will of intentions, by the way. So I had to go because it was, if I had not, and thankfully I did, if I had not left when I did, you know, I think the series of events that happened in my life would have been much worse, really would have been. So anyway, I moved out, boom. And yes, my mom did go into some deep depression and her moods start swinging, and and I I you know, I allowed my mom and my dad to take responsibility for her care in that regard. Because he said that he would be there through thick and thin. And sometimes it's good times and sometimes it's bad times. And if you say his word was his word, which is very rare, isn't that true? My dad said he would be there, and he was. Okay, until his last breath, he was there. So when I moved out, I can remember my mom used to try to, was as soon as I got out, that's when I was feeling some relief, because I needed to get going here, because I felt like I was behind the eight ball anyway. Being, everybody else had moved out. All my other friends and girlfriends and all that, they were already out of their home. Some were in college, some was this, some were married, blah blah blah. You know, and so anyway, when I did move out, before moving out, I started meditation. When I was still living in my parents' home, that's when I started meditation. But then when I got out, it went deep. I went deep into meditation, meaning I started reading all these books and just getting really, really um, captured by meditation and understanding the flow of life. There's a book out on flow. I remember reading that thick book, and I got so fascinated by what was in there. And then there was other people that did books, these big thick books at the time, and I couldn't believe I read all of that stuff. So that tells you I was really really into that. I was really into reading and consciousness and meditation and stuff like that. And I can remember when, I can remember when I did move out, I did have panic attacks. I was going to I felt like I was having panic. Described it as, well, it's described as panic attacks. I can remember like having a hard time breathing for some reason, sitting on the couch, minding my own business. Then I couldn't breathe, and I was like panicking and carrying on, and I didn't know. And I did go in and talk to a physician somewhere, and that's what he said to. That's what he's the first one that said that to me. Maybe you're having panic attacks or something, or maybe you be having. I don't think he said anxiety. I think he said panic attacks, because that's what they were calling it then. I can't remember. I can't remember, but that's irrelevant. So I can remember my mom was calling me all the time and calling me, and I had to say to her, you need to handle your responsibilities with what you are going through, and you need to talk to me, my dad, and see if he can assist you. I had to say that stuff to her. I said, you have to do what you can to take responsibility for your life, and this and that and the other. Now, is that harsh? No, no, no. Sometimes you do have to be direct. And that's how I am now. I know this is going to be a long video, and whoever listens. If you don't want to, that's fine. That's why with me, you have to be direct with me. Okay, you have to be direct. I don't respond well to innuendos, and sometimes I just miss. Okay, what are you saying to me? But over time, I built that up, and I've always been kind of sharp with, when I'm talking to people, and that's why I had to work on understanding people's feelings, and not that I was intentionally wanting to hurt their feelings. I just had to. I mean, I just was direct. Look, this is what has to, So, and a lot of people did appreciate that. I realized that, coming forward throughout my life. I even had people. I can remember having people coming to me, um, because I when I was in elementary school, middle school, whatever they were calling it, um, boys. I'm gonna call them boys, because that's how they were acting. They were constantly harassing me all the time, making fun of me, harassing me, and bothering me all the time. And I mean, I did, and it really didn't bother me too much because I am a black lesbian, by the way, and I've known that for a while. There was nothing in our household. My point that made me a black lesbian. So let's make that clear, and clear and effective. Okay, there's nothing in our culture. What I was reading, okay, that caused me to become a black lesbian. Okay. Now, I can remember when, I did move out, and my, again, my mom was trying to call. Not trying to call. She was calling me all the time. I'm reading these big, thick books of material, and I was so fascinated by it. I was so fascinated. Like, what? Understanding, stuff that was happening to me, why I kept having these certain things happening to me, certain vivid dreams, and lucid dreaming, those kind of things. I was just really functioning really high on that. It's like, wow, why? And so meditation did calm it down. It calmed me down. you know it helped me to. And once I started meditating, the panicking and all this, like I can't breathe, that went away as well. All those things went away. So I realized, man, I got work to do. When I say I got work to do, I had a lot to learn. I think my parents may have sheltered us a little bit from things because I wanted to play sports. My mom wasn't going to allow that. She wouldn't allow me to stay after, blah, blah, blah. So she kept always interfering with that when I wanted to be more social, and get out, stuff like that. But, she always interfered with that and wouldn't allow me to do any of that kind of stuff. So, and every time and back then, again, we had that, you know, that rotary, I don't know how they call that damn phone, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about, the one that you dial with your finger and so, I could never ever get an opportunity to talk on the phone as well because my sister would spend hours on hours and hours and hours and hours. She was so inconsiderate with that. And, if she hears me saying that, she was extremely inconsiderate of how she spent so much time on the phone and not knowing that this house was full of people. Okay, I lost a lot of friends that way. You know why? Because they said, Michelle, I've been trying to call you. I've been trying to call you. And so, that kind of pissed me off a lot. It pissed me off because I miss opportunities, you know, with these people reaching out, wanting to be friends with me, wanting to hang out with me, and this and that and the other. And so I missed those opportunities, but that's fine. And so that's probably why some people, some of my friends from, you know, from when I was growing up, they felt that I was, they felt something about my personality. At the time, they thought I was just disregarding them. And that's not true at all. And I have reached out to quite a bit of them, and or talked to quite a bit of them that I can reach, and I did explain my situation and apologize if I offended them, because that was not my intention. We was in a household of, like I said, my sister was really inconsiderate when it came to that. And one day and I've been attempting to sit down and talk to her too, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant right now, because at the end of the day, I'm still responsible and accountable for how I perceive things and how I manage things and how I take responsibility for my life, regardless of how I was treated or blah, blah, blah. Now, if I hurt someone unintentionally, I will definitely take responsibility for that. And I've done that. As a matter of fact, I've called people. We went out to dinner. We talked. We resolved any misunderstandings. And I felt good about that. And then when the social media thing came in, it created some issues as well. I did the best I could to apologize to people that were hurt and offended by what happened with that. Another story at another time. So, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. Sometimes and like I said, with me, you have to be really direct, because I didn't know I was doing that, but I was always picking up contradictions, and it was, kind of stopped me there, to where I always wanted to question, okay, what was that all about? I asked a lot of questions. So it's ironic. I got into a first responder field where I had to answer a lot of questions. I mean, ask a lot of questions to get to get the truth. But the truth has invaded a lot of us. It has left the building, truth. Okay, whereas people have developed this ability to lie. Okay, I've done my share of lying. I think I've said that many a times. I've lied to. You do pick up what's happening in the environment based on people's behavior, cause and effect. So if everybody else is running around lying and exaggerating, what do you think I'm going to do? Bragging about what I can do for you and what I'll do to you, and just lying and carrying on. I mean, it was funny, but that's part of cause and effect, and that's part of how our behaviors does affect people around us. Whether you want to call it positive or negative, the fact of the matter is a cause and effect, and sometimes you can neutralize it, but sometimes it causes complete and utter destruction. Okay, complete and utter destruction. When I think about the behaviors of what the people I knew in my little culture, place where it wasn't little. It's actually a large community of, people of color, mostly Black and Spanish. And, our behavior does affect our environment, which in turn affects our climate, and in turns affects the universe. I mean, that's just the process of a cause and effect. It may start out as something very, very small, but then it can build when you are disregarding it and ignoring it and saying, "Oh, I'll take care of it tomorrow," or being complacent. It comes to a point to where it will explode and it will destroy. It does. Okay, and it is, and that's what's happening. Due to people not keeping their word, people lying, and overwhelming people with the lies and people being comfortable with, if so, being comfortable and allowing people to continue to lie to them, like leaders, okay, whether or where whoever calls themselves leaders, and we know who calls themselves leaders in certain cultures. We do know that. I mean, am I right? In some people's cultures, it was either the church, or mostly it was the church for our community. you know um, they were supposed to be setting an example, and did they do a good job? Only time will tell. It's based on what their intentions were. So the question would be to them, did you live up to your intentions you had for your communities? Did you? Do you consider your intentions as a pastor, bishop, teacher? Do you consider your intentions as successful in the communities you served? That's a question, actually. But you don't have to answer me. Okay, you're going to eventually have to answer that for you. Okay, because, you're going to have to answer to your behaviors at some point. You're not going to get away from that. So I notice, like I said, I call it erosion of the cultures, and that's what I saw. Okay, you see services in the community, and all of a sudden the services are gone. Grocery stores, libraries, schools. Those are the services needed to have a fully functioning, thriving, successful community. We had that. But over the course of time, it all disappeared somehow. And because of our overwhelmed of our responsibilities, that's all I'm thinking. Or our faith and trust in these so-called leaders to take care of it and look out for those communities. Again, I would love to hear them. You don't have to say you don't have to say a word to me. I would love to know from these so-called leaders of those times during the let's go. Okay, you don't have to do the 70s. The 70s may not be alive. Well, they should be, but they may not be. Say from the 80s to now. If you were a so-called leader in those during those times, the 80s and to this point now, what do you think about the state of your your communities, your cities, your state? I would love to. Like I said, I don't want to know. I mean, I already know the cause and effect should tell you something right now. Where we're at, where we are now, should tell you what the cause was and how we got here. That's all I'm saying. So I'm not gonna say too much. I think I said enough. Sometimes the inspiration hits, and it just comes to me. But the point of the matter is, no matter what was going on in the community, okay, those people in that community where I grew up were role models to me. Okay, they taught me how to live. Okay, they taught me how to survive. Okay, there were predators in the neighborhood, as I've said. Okay, older men were always approaching me or attempting to approach me. Okay, I made sure they didn't get very close at all because I know what was going on. So they used to always attempt to kind of yell out at me because they knew I wasn't going to allow them to get close to me at all. I put a stop to that. So They never got close to me at all, but they did continue their harassment from across the street, maybe, or while they're on their bikes riding by, maybe, you know. And I do remember when I was working at a little a restaurant. I'm not going to say what restaurant it was in the community where I used to have to walk to and from, the restaurant as a little, not a little girl, but I was a teenager. I got the job at 15, and I left the job at 19. So I sometimes used to have to walk, and sometimes used to have to ride my bicycle. And those same type of men, were there, were around. Drug dealers were around and there. Everything was there, but I still went to and from work. And I usually like that I don't know, I used to like that 2 to 11 shift. Something about those hours were good for me because I'm not a morning person. 2 to 11, I used to work at that restaurant. And I would either ride my bike home or I would walk, after 11. And I used to always, I would go to that job. I would walk to that job and be there by 2. Always early. I was always an early bird because I didn't want to be late. I cared about all of that kind of. I wanted to present myself as someone responsible and accountable. And the point is that the majority of us were responsible and accountable for our communities. We did care about our communities. Okay. It was a hidden agenda. I don't know. Was it a man's word over a man's word as to, I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't participate in all that. I was too overwhelmed and worrying about myself, as we are a lot. That's something that's required. You do have to plan how you're going to take care of yourself and provide for yourself and be responsible and accountable. And we let the so-called authorities handle matters they claim to represent. How about that? So in that community, in that culture, yes, all of them were role models to me. Okay, all of them. I can remember when I used to work at that restaurant, this man came in. He was a man. And it was obviously he was suffering from something, a mental illness or something to that effect. And he told me he was a Vietnam veteran. And, he was telling me about things that happened to him and as to why he was why he turned out to be who he is, as somebody suffering from mental illness. Basically, that's what can't remember the term he used at the time. He was a Vietnam veteran. And I can remember he would come into the restaurant all the time and all he wanted was a cup of black coffee. But this, you know what? As it turns out, because he would call, he kept not harassing me, but he said, look, let me call you. I just want to check on you, make sure you're being okay. So he was looking out for me, and I didn't know that because he was living in the community. But this man never was inappropriate with me, ever. He just was calling the house all the time. He called my parents' house, I think, almost every day. And my poor mom had to, my mom picked up the phone and he would ask about me and where I am, and my mom would tell him, and then he'll hang up and he'd be satisfied with that until the next day. He'll call again. He was calling every day, and he did that even when I moved out. He was calling, and I forgot about the man. But I know he has died. He has to have died by now. He was a Vietnam veteran, so, and this was back in the the late 70s and early 80s, I guess. So your character does matter, how you build up your character. And if you are genuinely doing the best you can to be an upstanding human being, your environment will take care of you all the time. You know, and I always felt protected at times, even though in the midst of danger, right? Even in the midst of danger, I always felt protected as well. You know, my instincts, you know, my instincts and my gut feeling. I always felt protected and warned. I was warned about things, you know. So the truth does set you free. You have to be truthful and you have to walk the talk. That's the whole point of all of this. While I'm up, you have to walk the talk. You know, you have to be a man of your word, a woman of your word, however you identify. If you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. If you say you care, you need to, there needs to be some results to say you care. Okay. If I say I love you, trust me, I love you. It doesn't matter if you love me or not. That's not the point. I'm a woman of my word. And to the best of my ability, I stick to my word. You know, I do walk the talk. Now, there are things happening, and I'm going to come back and talk about that a little bit more, where, you know, let's put it this way. I know I'm being targeted. Okay. But at the same time, I have no fear. I, you know, I'm just amazed of how we use our resources and the people we choose to use our resources on. That's the more amazing thing to me, you know, and how people wait until certain opportunities present themselves, you know, to justify why they do this or that and the other to certain people. So again, I have no secrets, so I'm good. I'm truthful. I'm an upstanding woman, you know, and I'll stand by that forever. So I know I'm being targeted. It makes sense now. Now, am I being paranoid? Time will tell. So I'm going to go ahead here, get me something to drink, and relax a little bit more. Maybe read a little bit more. We'll see. You know, I have to get my body kind of regulated sometimes when there's things to do. But yes, everything is making sense to me. Everything's quite clear. You know, quite clear. And it's amazing, disturbing sometimes, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. It's just, I just consider it amazing. So when it's over, I will not hold any. I'm not going to be retaliating. Not at all. I'm not going to hold grudges. Not at all. You know, not at all. I'll still smile about it when I think about it, and you know, and talk, because I talk to some people. There's nothing. We have to understand what we've done to good upstanding people. And now, will I receive an apology? I doubt it. And I don't really want one because I don't trust it. A man's word is not his word anymore. Or a woman. Their word is not their word anymore. They'll say anything now, you know. I mean, it's so easy to say anything now. but the technology we have, and um, and how technology is using us. We think we're using technology. No, technology is using us, because no matter how much technology you create, technology cannot suppress the truth, because the truth is within us. So no matter what they do, what kind of technology they use to get, whether it's false testimony, mind control, hypnosis, whatever they're doing and whatever they have done, deep fake, you know, the truth is the truth, just like love is love. Remember that. The truth is truth. You you don't have to defend the truth ever. Just like you don't ever have to defend if you love someone, or you spread love. You spread love. And so that's what I do. So I'm gonna close it out. Again, get me something to drink. I've been talking so much, but this had to be said. Because at some point, it gets exposed. So again, like I said, I am not going to seek any type of retaliation against anybody. But it ought to, it ought to shift something in people that were participating. I don't know. Sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissistic people, again, they know how to manipulate. So for them, that may be all they know is manipulation, because they don't have empathy. They don't know how to build up empathy for people. All they see is a mission. Well, not necessarily a mission. All they see is a target. All they see is a target. And they see these targets as the problem or the enemy. So that makes them justified in doing whatever the hell they want to do in the name of truth. Keep that in mind.